I'm here in the garden at St. Stephen's Catholic Church in Portland, Oregon, and today is the 5th day in our Novena to Saint Philomena, Virgin and Martyr. Well, this is an exciting story we've been following, and yesterday we heard about a young lady by the name of Pauline Jaricot, a young lady, a French woman of wealth, but of very ill health, and so ill of health that her life is in danger. And it is not seen that she could even travel outside of her home. And she decides to go to Paray-le-Monial. Her doctor, she figures if she's going to die anyway, she may as well make a little pilgrimage. But she really wants to go to Mugnano to visit Saint Philomena. So she makes it to Paray-le-Monial, there in France, to visit the Shrine of the Sacred Heart. And she figures, well, if I can make it here, I can make it to Rome. If I can make it to Rome, I can make it to Mugnano. And so they go over the Alps through snow, and she survives. And so here they come to Rome, to the nuns of the Sacred Heart of the Trinità dei Monti, who received her with the greatest affection. Her weakness was extreme, and it was simply unthinkable that after a long and perilous journey in which she had braved so many dangers, and even death itself, she had to halt at the very threshold of the Vatican. She could go no further. All right, well, let's pick up where we left off yesterday and her interview with the Holy Father. We're reading here from St. Philomena the Wonder Worker by Father Paul O'Sullivan, O.P., published in 1925 and reprinted by Tan Books. Interview with the Holy Father. It was surely an extraordinary honor, but a still more extraordinary consolation for this most humble girl to receive the visit of the Vicar of Christ, who came expressly not merely to visit and console her, but to thank and bless her. The Holy Father opened his great heart and poured forth his thanks in the most affectionate terms. He told his dear child how pleased he was with all she had done. He praised her great courage and ardent faith in coming to Rome, and blessed her most abundantly. It was like a visit of our blessed Lord, for in his vicar she saw and reverenced the Master himself. Seeing how exhausted she was, he asked her to pray for him when she got to heaven. "Yes, Holy Father," she replied, "I promise to do so. But if on my return from Mugnano I come back well, and go on foot to the Vatican, will your Holiness deign to proceed without delay with the final inquiry into the cause of Saint Philomena?" "Yes, yes, my daughter," replied the Pope, "for that, indeed, would be a miracle of the first class." Turning to the Superioress, the Holy Father said in Italian, "How ill our daughter is! She seems to me as if she had come forth from the grave. We shall never see her again. She will never return." Pauline understood what he said, but only smiled confidently. When leaving, the Pope blessed her anew and said to Cardinal Lambruschini, who accompanied him, "I recommend my dear daughter to you. Grant her all the indulgences and privileges it is possible to bestow." It was now August, and the heat was terrific. The little party started for Mugnano, but had to travel by night and rest by day. They arrived at the sanctuary on the eve of St. Philomena's feast, which is August 11th. Mugnano at last. The Neapolitans and the crowds from all the surrounding districts who flocked to the sanctuary for the feast went wild with excitement when they heard who Pauline was and why and whence she had come. Their sympathy for her on the one hand, their jealousy for the reputation of their dear patroness on the other, awakened the highest enthusiasm. Here was this French lady, so loved by the Holy Father, who had done so much for religion, come hundreds and hundreds of miles over the snow-capped Alps, through mountain fastnesses, braving perils and death itself to invoke Saint Philomena. She must be cured. "Dear Saint Philomena," they cried, "you must cure this dear lady who has come such a distance to ask your aid. She has done enough for God and for the Madonna for you to cure her." And then, knocking at the urn of the saint, as it were in threatening tones, they called out, "Do you hear us, Philomena? If you do not grant our prayer at once, we will invoke you no more. It will be all over between us. So much the worse for you, great saint." Well, the uproar became so terrific that Pauline could scarcely endure it. And now the miracle. The next day, the feast itself, when Pauline received Holy Communion near the urn of the saint, she experienced such frightful pains all over her body, and her heart beat so violently that she fainted away. At the sight of what they thought was death, the crowds gave way to such cries and vociferations that it was thought safer to carry the chair on which Pauline was lying out of the church. However, she regained consciousness enough to make a sign to be left near the urn, on which she fixed her eyes with an expression of the deepest affection. Suddenly, an abundant flood of hot tears burst from her eyes. The color came back to her cheeks. A warm, healthy glow spread through her benumbed limbs. Her soul was inundated with such heavenly joy that she believed that she was about to enter heaven. But it was not death. It was life. Philomena, the beloved, had cured her, and she was preserved for long years of toil and labor, which were to end in a glorious, though bloodless, martyrdom. Although she felt that she was cured, Pauline dared not for some moments reveal the fact, dreading the outburst of enthusiasm that it was certain to provoke. However, the superior of the sanctuary, understanding what had happened, ordered all the bells to peal and announce the miracle. The crowds, on hearing the news, went frantic with joy and were absolutely beside themselves with delight. The church and the streets rang with their shouts. Vivas, vivas resounded on all sides. It would be impossible to describe adequately this magnificent and soul-stirring demonstration of faith. Viva Saint Philomena! Viva our dear saint! Viva the great virgin and martyr! Viva the good French lady! In their wild enthusiasm, they rushed toward Pauline and wanted to carry her in triumph on their shoulders. This, however, she absolutely refused to allow. Idolized by the people, Pauline tarried in Mugnano for some time, her soul overflowing with joy. She passed long hours in sweet colloquy at the feet of her heavenly benefactress, and great were the graces she received, more even for soul than body. At last, when the day of departure arrived, and she had to tear herself away from the sanctuary, she took with her a great relic of Saint Philomena, which she placed in a life-sized statue of the saint. This was clad in royal robes, given the seat of honor in the carriage, and was hailed by all as the Princess of Paradise. At the various stages of the journey, the physicians she had brought, the postilions who had brought Pauline to Mugnano, more like a corpse than a living person, cried out, "A miracle! A miracle! Viva Saint Philomena!" At this cry, crowds used to gather, bringing wreaths and garlands which they hung on the carriage, invoking at the same time the name of the saint with the most intense piety and love. Naples was profoundly moved on the arrival of the Miraculé. A thrill ran through the people. The bishop received Pauline with great honor, and in the presence of the apostolic nuncio and the king of Sicily, presented the body of Saint Januarius for her to kiss and venerate. Blessed and invoked on all sides, the Princess of Paradise and her escort soon arrived in Rome, where, the better to enjoy the Holy Father's surprise, Pauline had not announced her cure. Rome again. When, in the full enjoyment of health and strength, she presented herself in the Vatican, all those who had heard of her were thunderstruck. "Is it really my daughter?" said the Holy Father. "Has she come back from the grave? Or has God manifested in her favor the power of the Virgin Martyr?" "It is I indeed, most Holy Father," she replied, "whom your Holiness saw so recently at the very door of death, and on whom Saint Philomena has looked with pity. Since she has given me back my life, deign, Holy Father, to give me permission to build a chapel in honor of my benefactress." "Most certainly," replied the Pope, in accents full of joy and affection. Then he insisted on hearing from her own lips the details of the cure, and in his delight and wonder he ordered her to walk up and down in his presence. "Again, again, quicker, quicker," he exclaimed, laughing. "I want to be sure that what I see is not an apparition from the other world, but really and truly my dear daughter from Fourvière." And as this dear daughter walked backward and forward, she naturally, without meaning it, turned her back on the Pope. The Master of Ceremonies hastily reminded her that she must not turn her back on the Holy Father. Whereupon the Pope said with a smile, "Nonsense! Do not trouble about that. God himself has made far greater exceptions in her favor." The sovereign pontiff now ordered Pauline to remain in Rome for a whole year, that the miracle might be thoroughly investigated, during which time he conferred on her many and great privileges, and gave orders for an immediate inquiry to be made into the cause of Saint Philomena. At the closing of the year, with the blessing of Christ's vicar, Pauline returned to Fourvière in France. And there we have the end of chapter 4. Well, I can't wait to find out what happens next. So you'll have to join me tomorrow for day 6 in our novena to Saint Philomena. And now it's time to pray our novena prayer. So we'll have to move over there in the garden. And in order to do so, you'll have to click on the link in the description below this video for another video to pray the novena prayer with me. Or you can click on another link in the description below the video for a printout of the novena prayer itself. Well, join me tomorrow for day 6 in our novena to Saint Philomena, and don't miss a day of prayer with us.